Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight we're going to dive into looking at an example application. There was a follower who sent me a bunch of, I don't want to say a bunch of apps, sent me an app that he's been working on over on the Discord channel, and I looked at it and was like, this is kind of cool, and he gave permission for me to go through a bunch of issues that he was having on the stream, and I figured, why not? This is probably a perfect example. I can come up with my own little samples of different WPF issues, but sometimes when the rubber meets the road, that's where things get interesting. So we're going to take a look at that. And then I've got a couple other things. We'll see. We'll see how long things take. I have no idea. Okay, first, couple things. One, Microsoft Ignite coming up next week. I will be there in person. So if you happen to be at Microsoft Ignite, feel free to stop by and say hi. I should be on the 5th floor in the Experts Exchange area. I don't know what they're calling that whole area, but it will be in the developer section of that over near Ballroom 2. So if you are around for that, great. If not, Ignite is a free conference. You can register online. Or if you would prefer, actually, hang on. Bring, bring, boom. Right. The other option, .NET Conf, is also coming up at exactly the same dates, because why not schedule multiple conferences over the exact same time frame, because that's not going to cause any confusion whatsoever. But .NET Conf is fully online. It's slightly more developer targeted. You can kind of look at the speaker lineup and kind of gather a little bit about, what you might see. For example, Fowler's known for his ASP network. Hanselman's, I guess, all over the place. David and Maddie are both Maui. Daniel Roth, expect Blazor related content and whatnot. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming. There is also some free digital swag, because who doesn't like cool images and whatnot? So if you are interested and want to focus a little more on the developer stuff, check it out. I thought I had read somewhere that recordings are available after the fact as well, but I'm not seeing that here, so take that with a grain of salt. That may or may not be true. But we're going to go with, I hope it's true. Oftentimes they make this content fairly easily accessible. Okay, so tonight, I got a couple WPF apps. So I got to figure out which one I'm looking at real quick, because I don't know which one I'm looking at. I think I want to start here. So these apps here, and I'm just going to quickly pick on this so I can look at the folder, what I have now. Perfect. Okay, so this is the starting position. This is how the app started. I was given two versions of this. The starting, and then what Alex got to. And then I've got a bulleted list of things to take a look at. So for starters, first thing I immediately notice, it's using my WPF template, which made me happy. I did note that he built this cool little split view thing out, which is kind of cool. I've contemplated doing some stuff like this. And if we take a look, just in case anybody else wants it, he is very much leveraging the Ma apps stuff. So there is this hamburger menu control. You can see there's a header template. There's some items. There's some options. So if this type of view is what you are looking for, there is some built-in support inside of Ma apps, and material design and Ma apps do play nicely with each other. There's a linking package. If you run into issues with it, let me know. It's oftentimes a pain for me to test. So occasionally that poses some issues, but you can get this kind of behavior. I've contemplated putting something like this into the material design project specifically, just because this layout with material design is fairly common. So it may be a control that makes its way into the library at some point in time. Goal, again, is not for the library to be a control library as much as a theme library, but oftentimes to do a lot of the material designy stuff, you need some custom controls. So we've got this calibration grid. And you can see that what we have here is we've got this kind of some plus minus stuff. I don't actually know what I'm looking at for what it's worth. So if you're asking me what large filament and small filament is, one is large, one is small, clearly. And they're clearly in different grids. And there's a little bit here. We're getting away. I was going to see if I could find a sample, Because large and small are basically the same width of letters, you can kind of see that there's a, if we get real close and detailed, they are off by, I think, about half a pixel or 1 pixel shifted left. But for practical purposes, unless somebody's going to zoom in, these lines kind of line up here. So one of the things we're going to look at is how to actually do the alignment of these things. So there's that. It's in here. Great. Okay, let's look at version 2. So Alex had commented that he watched my recent video where we dove into the data grid and figured, hey, the data grid looks kind of cool. It kind of looks like what I'm building. Let's go ahead and try the data grid. Now, I don't know if you noticed, there is something going on here. When I click on this, it's a little slow to load. It's not huge, but it is enough to be noticeable. And it's like, huh, that's kind of obnoxious. And then you can see here, this is basically the same, except for now we've got this data grid style thing going on. And there's a little bit of stuff happening here. And even things like this sorting is dog slow, like really slow. So we're going to look at fixing performance, changing some of this up. I don't know which version of this app we're going to work on. Trying to decide, because I was told we could theoretically scrap all of this. We're going to do these in random orders. Okay, here we go. Random order it is. Okay, so grid calibration page. Not shockingly, this is where the grid calibration stuff is. Now, one of the things that is important to note when you see it, the issue that's going on here. Actually, we won't spoil it too much. So, basic user control. There's a view model. If we take a look at the view model, we can see that right in the view model's constructor, it's just iterating through this enum functionally, which is kind of an interesting way of going through and doing this. So there's this big long enum here. I mean, I personally don't like the underscore enum, but everybody gets to name their stuff how they want. But we've got this enum. There's some description attributes set on the various enum members, and there's just a bunch of them, like around 98 of them, give or take a little bit. And so this is literally just iterating through all of them. Now, a slightly cleaner approach here would be enum get values, right? And so you could come through, and rather than doing this I equals, all right, so I would tend to do something a bit more akin to this. So let's change this up. Var enum value in, and then this becomes enum value, and then this becomes enum value, boom, right? And this should be a for each, because that's how for eaches work. So slight minor thing in my opinion, because this saves you on somebody, you know, accidentally putting something after the end or whatever, right? Enums are just named numerics, but it's also worth being aware that they can have weird things where if you like turn on flags, or somebody could arbitrarily set the first value in here rather than its default to 0, we could do, you know, 42, because that's a thing. And then this becomes 43, and then somebody could reorder, and it gets weird. Doing the enum get values is a little easier because you get just the declared values, because technically enum value of 50,000 is technically a valid value. It's not a defined named value, but it is a value. And since these are just names over numerics, you end up with something like that. You'll also note that there's some wackiness being done here with the tabs. We're going to get to that in a minute. So we can see here that if we that we're loading all this up, but our first thing is to try to address the performance problem. So if we go through and do this, seeing multiple cursors is confusing me. If we click on the second tab, you'll note the load speed is near instantaneous. Okay, near instantaneous. That's our first clue. So it's not the data grid or anything else in here. It's something about the rows of the data grid, because as soon as we got rid of the initial set of items, the performance drastically improves. This is like binary search level debugging of just start cutting things out and see when it gets better, and then slowly start putting things back. Okay, so we know that the load of the items is what's killing us. So if we relaunch, I'm going to close this version of the app so I don't get confused of which one I'm looking at. So if we come over here and look at this again, once again, several seconds worth of slowness. We're going to open up Snoop and take a look. So for those people unfamiliar with Snoop, once you install it, crosshairs next to the binoculars are your best friend. Drag it over anywhere on the app that you want to snoop, doesn't matter where. And then the next thing you do is you put your cursor over the thing you want to inspect, and the magical keystroke is holding down Control and Shift. And it will automatically drive your visual tree over here to the item underneath your cursor. And then the other big thing to be aware of is these numbers just to the left. These indicate your nesting levels. So I'm 43 nesting levels deep. So it can be just a quick and easy way to kind of line things up. So in our case, we want to go up to 34. We can see there's a data grid row. Now, here's the next thing that hopefully gets people's attention. When I saw this, my mind immediately jumped because I was like, hang on. Like, I only have a math minor, which means I can count on both hands without having to take my shoes off. But just ballparking it, there's a lot fewer rows displayed here than I see here. I see a lot of rows. I'm going to go with about one for each item. Now, the reason this got my attention is because by default, the data grid should have been using virtualization, which means it shouldn't create any more rows than what it actually needs for display. But for some reason here, this thing is creating a lot of them. And so it's like, okay, that's interesting. The next thing to look at is you go over here and you take a look at when we click on data grid, and you'll note the actual height, 4,200. Interesting. The other thing to be aware of, and it's very difficult to see on Snoop, but Snoop puts this little red rectangle around the item that you have selected. So you can see there's the top edge, there's the right edge, we go down to the bottom. There's no line along the bottom. So this data grid is being allowed to expand to insane heights. Now if we go up a little bit, because we can look at this guy's data grid. Okay, let's keep going up. Hold on. The thing right above it has a height of 649. And you can see that our little Snoop red thing, we now see the bottom. So the data grid is being allowed to become significantly larger than the container that it's within. And so when we look back over here, what's actually happening is there's this extra scroll viewer, and I'm pretty confident this was just an accidental add going from the old to the new. Because if we look at the old one, previously there was a scroll viewer with a grid and a stack panel and some stuff inside of here. And so the stuff inside of here needed a scroll bar. And then switched over to data grid. Data grid internally contains a scroll viewer. So for any control that internally contains a scroll viewer, it is rare that you should ever need to wrap it in a scroll viewer. Rare. Not saying never, but it's fairly unusual to need to do something like that, because the idea is that internally it should be doing its own scrolling, and by taking that scrolling away from it, it's unable to virtualize because it goes, well, I'm going to get as big as I want. And the scroll viewer says, I got a scroll bar. You can have as much size as you want. It's like, yeah, that's not quite what we want. So fix number one, grid row 1, move it down on the data grid. We're just going to nuke the scroll viewer. Boom. And actually, I'm going to format XAML. Ooh, that might be a little aggressive. Does this thing have my XAML styler? Oh, it does. Mwah. Okay. I just mwah. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, so we come over here. We're going to fire this guy up again. Click on the second tab. There's a slight delay. There's still a slight delay. It's not nearly as instantaneous because it still had to render all of these things. However, it is significantly faster. And with some of these things, there's not necessarily going to be a great way to always get it. And I would probably have to go in and look at how this MAAPS control is holding on to its content. I suspect it's similar to a tab control, where the content is thrown away when the tab control switches and not cached. So blessings and curses for it, depends on what you want. So that fixes at least problem 1. Great. Okay, next problem. These little numeric up-down controls. So we're going to take a look at these. So if we go ahead and look at grid voltages, this guy here is a it's just right above. This is a very simple view model. Derives from observable object. It's got a string for the first column. It's got an unsigned short for the second column. Now, there may be a question of why unsigned short is being used here. This is context. So a few things that are worth noting. Sometimes people get it in their heads that using a 16-bit integer is more efficient. It's actually less efficient than using a 32-bit integer, which sounds counterproductive. But the reason is, in order to leverage a 16-bit, the registers actually down at your CPU level are likely going to be bigger, which means these things end up having to get padded to be used. So leveraging something smaller than 32 may not actually be buying you anything. Now, it's very possible that for domain purposes, you don't want something to be bigger than this. That's a reasonable explanation. Another good time to use like a short or a U short is some sort of interop. Okay, those are good things. But if you're using a U short simply to save on space, you're actually doing the opposite, because it's now using more compute to be able to pad that value out. So avoid using like U short, short, byte, S byte. There's one that no one ever uses, unless there's a domain reason to do so. Right, so that's the explanation. But what we've got here is we've got this grid value. Now, I am going to go ahead and do a partial here, and we're going to go on grid value changed. Yeah, we'll do that. That sounds great. Boom, boom, boom. F9 breakpoint relaunch. And I'm going to immediately turn off this breakpoint because, as you can see, I'm coming through from right here, where this is calling the constructor setting the property, and then we're hitting our changed thing. That's wonderful. I don't want to deal with that. Okay, breakpoint back on. Go to data grid. Okay, so here's the question. I go clicky, 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 and it doesn't update. Does not update. Now, what's going on here? So, step 1, we're going to once again use our lovely little friend Snoop. And we're going to come over here and take a look at this guy and figure out what's going on. If we dive in here, so Control Shift, and then I'm immediately looking for the numeric up-down control. Remember that Snoop is going to drive you into the visual tree, and controls have templates, and so you will oftentimes land on things inside of the controls template, so you sometimes have to work your way up. So, step 1, we're going to check our data context. So we can accurately see that our view model has a grid value of 10. Not great. But if we look at the properties over here and we check, I think it's called value, we can see that the value of the control is 13, and it has a binding on it pointing to path grid value. Well, that doesn't seem right. The control clearly has the value of 13. The data context has a value of 10, but this thing shows binding pointed right there. Right click, delve binding. Okay, in Snoop, when you delve into the binding, what that does is it allows you to look at the properties of the binding object directly. So we can see this is in fact a two-way binding, so it should go back and forth. Let's see, was there anything else in here I wanted to show? I think that was it. At least for the moment. So if we come back over to our XAML, we can take a look. The data grid column is not fancy. It is a template column, so it's you manage it yourself. There's just a cell template set on here, and there's a range from 10 to 1500. Great, and we can see the binding here. So what's going on? So the first hint here is if I double click in here and get my cursor where I've got the ability to type in here, and then I click out. Oh, is it going to make me change it? And then click out. No? Do I not still have a breakpoint? I do have a breakpoint. Did this earlier. Now I'm confused. 4. Oh, 4 is smaller than the minimum. 22. Well, that's just dumb. It doesn't work. Okay. Well, spoiler alert. We're gonna come in here, and we're gonna change this guy. So normally when this problem crops up, it's with a regular text box, and people questioning, hey, why is the value not updating as it changes? So the trick here is on the binding itself. The default behavior of a binding, if you look at its update source trigger, you've got. Let's see if I can zoom. Oh, I didn't get it. Hang on. We can do it this way. Come on, take me there. Take me here. Boom. This enum here has a handful of values. There is default, property changed, lost focus, and explicit. And in general, if you have it set to default, default is going to be lost focus. So oftentimes the way you can force the binding to trigger is you can go through, you can put your focus directly inside of the text box and then hit tab or click off to move focus somewhere else in order to get it to update the binding. Effectively tell the control, hey, take your current value and send it back to my view model. Please update immediately. In our case, what we really want to do is trigger this thing to update every time the property changes so that when the user's sitting there clicking the buttons, it actually goes through. So now if we launch, oops, left my breakpoint enabled. At some point, I'm going to figure out how to pin these windows here so that they stop doing that. Okay, breakpoint back here. Let's see. Yeah, grid calibration, collapse. And now if I click, old value 10, new value 11. So simple fix, but changing the update source trigger. Now, the reason it's set up like this is because in a lot of cases, you can imagine like a text box that has a large form field. Some people type really fast. And though your properties should be fairly simple, there is a cost every time that binding has to go and update the value on your view model. So sometimes you would like it delayed a little bit and not until the user is done. The other thing which is why it is set to lost focus, because in general, does it really need to be updated as the user's typing, or does it need to be updated when the user's done and has moved on? Because oftentimes, they type something into the text box, they click the save button at the bottom. That's the point where you then want to make sure the value is committed. And as soon as they went to click on that button, focus was lost from the text box, your view model was updated, and then the save button gets clicked. So it all kind of happens really quick, but it only does it once, which makes it a little better. The other thing to be aware of, especially if you're going to change update source trigger to property changed, there's another little attribute on here called delay. And this is oftentimes something that will get used in conjunction with this, especially if it's a field where the user is likely to be making a lot of changes very rapidly. If you set a delay on your binding, it does what's called debouncing. So rather than just pounding on your view model every time the value changes, it'll actually wait until the delay has elapsed without a change and then write it. So especially if it's something where the user may be typing a bunch, if you're seeing a performance hit, especially after setting the update source trigger, consider setting a small delay on there. A couple hundred milliseconds. Usually does it nice. Does it nice. In this case, there's not likely to be that many changes. If the user's typing or whatnot, a few extra updates, this doesn't seem like something that's that big of a deal. So we'll go ahead and leave it like that for now. But again, update source trigger on the binding makes the numeric up down behave the way we want, and we're off to the races. Okay, let me check my list. Let's see. Okay, so the next one, displaying enum descriptions. Okay, so this is another good one here. Is right now, every time we want to do this, I expected it to change when the text box was losing focus, but it wasn't changing. Yeah, and that was what I was seeing before, and I might have to go actually look at the numeric up down to see why it's changing this, because in theory it should have passed all the way through, but let's see if we can trace down. This may be hard to look at in the decompiled source. Yeah, go away. Value change, coerce. That's what I'm looking for. Binds two-way by default. Validate on update property changed. I might need to look. When I was playing with this earlier, when I moved this guy across, what I was seeing happen is it would in fact update when I typed in here and then tabbed away. It would not work when I typed. And now I'm confused as to why that is, of why it's not picking that up. Also, Alex, I think you said it was very late for you right now. Shouldn't you be asleep? I'm going to take a note on that, and I may circle back to digging into that a little more. I suspect it is related to how the numeric up-down is working. It could also be the fact that it's inside of a data grid cell. Maybe not. See, in the future, I'd like to get rid of maps and use entirely material design, but I need a numeric up down. Yeah, there is a pull request for a numeric up down control in there, and it is on my list of 5.0 things to go and do. So if we get far enough, that was one of the follow-up items I was going to take a look at. Okay. So let's talk about the display of these things, because I think that was the next big one. And for that, I think I'm actually going to jump back. I don't know if it's easier to do in your old one or your current one. So there are a couple ways to go about doing this, and we might even just abandon the data grid altogether. No, we'll put it. Let's do this. We're gonna do side-by-side comparison. So we got a data grid here. Let's go ahead and do Copilot. No, that's exact. Why would I duplicate it? Bad Copilot. Let's go ahead and do a list box, because I think this might be an easier way of doing it. Okay, so grid row 2. Okay, Copilot, now do your thing. No, you can't figure it out? Oh, dear heavens, Copilot. That is possibly the worst way to implement that. No, dear heavens, no. Let's see, item source. 1 second. Boom. Sorry, when your boss is messaging you, you should probably check it. Okay. And then tell him he can wait till tomorrow. There we go. So we are going to do a list box item template. Okay. Now, if we look at what this guy is doing, the idea here is we have these pipes that are currently sitting in the content that I believe the intent is we'd like to separate these things out into slightly different things. So something into the grid, something into the position center, and they only really need to be text. But we would like the text to line up nicely, right? We want the nice vertical bits going through here. So what I am going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I think what would be nice, yeah, we're gonna do, rather than fixing it completely, I'm gonna do a little string split game here. Public string, let's see, filament, do that. Public string, grid, public string, position. Come on, Copilot. Figure it out. What's the next one? Not smart enough. Okay. I was kind of hoping you'd figure it out. Oh, I can't do position. Okay, we're going to call this alignment. I'm going to completely guess at what this is supposed to be. Okay, and then I would like to do... you're getting... that's pretty close, Copilot. No, you were doing so good. Split on pipes. That's all I want. And then... There. Yeah, thank you, Copilot. See, that much was useful. Why can't you always do that? And actually, while we're in here, we're going to show off one more thing. So what we should probably do is we're going to do an if position is, and then we're going to leverage something that doesn't get used a whole lot called list pattern matching. This is something new, or I should say was new last year. So if you're already familiar with the curly brace for property pattern matching, list pattern match behave very similar. Drop your curly braces, put in square braces. You're done. We're going to go string filament, string grid, string oh, you had it, Copilot. I'm sorry for not trusting you. Finish it out for me. Okay, Copilot, now implement the rest. Come on. Oh, nope. Come on, Copilot. There you are. Thank you. Good, Copilot. The one advantage of this guy here is, and I'm just gonna make the warning shut up real quick. Oh, you'll do the first ones, but not the last one? You jerk. This is only going to match if the string split has a length of 4. So I expect it to have a length of 4. It should be fine. If it doesn't, this pattern match won't work. And then it's also matching in here. The other thing the list pattern match does have is it does have this concept. Say we didn't want to care about whether it was 4 or more. You can actually slap in a little ... similar to the range syntax that you can use. But it lets you say, yeah, I don't care about the rest. 4 plus whatever. So we'll do that. Okay. But all of this so that we can do a data template. And then we're going to do a data type. Let's see. I think we can do local. And then it was grid voltage. Boom. Okay. Now, here's the kicker. Is we are going to come in here and we're going to do a grid column definitions. We're going to do a column definition. Let's see. Let's do shared size group name. And this is going to be the magical incantation here. Because what do we got? We've got filament grid alignment voltage. So filament grid alignment voltage. Now, these names are completely arbitrary. The fact that I have made them resemble our properties, grid example, right? I'm going to do this just to prove a point. What is important is that the name is consistent, not that it matches anything else. What we're going to end up setting up here is grids that actually know about each other and will size accordingly. So especially when you want to get things lined up vertically across different areas, grid shared size scope is the magical incantation that we're headed towards. that will hopefully make life a little bit easier. So text block, text, binding. What? What did? I'm confused. Oh, dang it. That's why. That's why. I forgot. Some, like style target type, the property is defined as a type versus data template, where data type is defined as object. So if you don't do an X type, it won't know what you're talking about. Okay, there we go. Hey. Am I pointing at the right thing? Yeah. Oh, I'm debugging. That's probably not helping my case any. Why did you pop out? One of my least favorite features ever. I want to increase the drag length for that pop out. Visual Studio, I would like that option, please. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to be real explicit, even though 0 is the default. And then we're going to do grid, alignment, and then whatever the last one was, voltage. Boom. And then we just change this to a 1, change this to a 2, change this to a 3. Okay. That goes there, that goes there, that goes there. And then the last thing we need to do, well, I should say last thing. The next thing we need to do, width gets, and this is gonna behave weird, but we're gonna do it anyway. There. And then we have to say what range this scope is going to be. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a list box, and inside of each of the list items is going to be a grid. Each grid is going to have 4 columns. What we would like to do is have each of those 4 columns all be the same width. So if one of them's a bit longer than the others, they all should increase to match that size. Because we're using this shared size scope, it needs to know how far to look to figure out where it should find other shared size scopes. So attached property is shared size scope true. So generally you'll set this at a high-ish level, and by high-ish I mean the thing that's going to contain all of the grids. If we open this guy up, hopefully this just works. Be really cool if I got this to work on my first try. Okay, you, there, sit, stay. Okay, so that is sort of working. It has left me with a little bit to be desired. Most notably, any amount of margin. So we're gonna just put a little space between each of these because this is being hard to see. Margin. Actually, you know what? We're gonna do something slightly different. Let's do a. We could do a separator. Yeah, let's just do a separator. Margin. And then we're going to do separator. Let's see. Horizontal alignment right. That'll work. Move you up. Grid. Column 1. Just going to intentionally slap one on the end of each of these. There. Let's see. 2. You should be a 0. That's why I'm confused. And then we're going to go ahead and do I guess I'm going to end up having to separate these in all of the cases. So let's just do this. We'll do a left margin on each of these just to push them over. So boom, boom. Okay, if we look at it now, a little better. The margin got applied at least. Let's see. 1. I don't see it, but I also don't trust hot reload to be rendering it properly. Let's try this one more time. Still don't see it. Why do I not see my... Hey Snoop, why don't I see my separator? Separator should have a default style. Okay, so we come in here, content, grid, separator. Width 1, actual height 11. Let's see. Do you not have a background? Oh, it's because it is behind or on top of this guy, and it is hard to see. Because this, okay, so rather, okay. Okay, I'm gonna just fix this. Right margin rather than left margin. That way these things don't land on each other. Just zero that out. Makes it better. Why? I still don't understand why you're not rendering the way I expect. There's that. Separator width 10. Show it to me. Maybe it's just me, but that doesn't look like a width of 10. What am I missing here? In the right column. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's because, oh, that's why. Let's see. What is the stretch vertical? Yeah, that's what I'm wanting. And I don't recall the appropriate thingy on here. If I remember right, let's just open the material design real quick. If I remember right, it's supposed to play nice based upon the alignment. It's one of the few controls that changes up its behavior based upon alignment, unless I'm misremembering, which happens every so often. Let's see here. So I want to give me the separator style. Don't care. No. Give me back what I was going for. No. Let's see. Themes tests. So don't care about maps. Let's see. Don't care about UI tests. It's not going to be in calendar. Don't care about resource dictionary. Separator. Nope. Now we're getting closer. Let's see. Separator. There, that's the style I want. Show it to me. Right. Well, nope. That ain't gonna fly. Okay, fine. We'll do something more like this. Order. There. No. Let's see. Border thickness. Let's see. Left, top, right, bottom. There. Something like that. And then we do something like border brush, dynamic resource, material design. What was the just looked at it a second ago. I would like that brush. But that may or may not be, what version of material design are we referencing? That's a 5.0 one. Let's see, the old brush name was material design separator. Something separator. Let's see, maps. It's probably I don't care that much is the problem. Actually, let's just do this. Binding text element dot. There. Complicated way of getting around it, but you know what? It'll work. So something like that. Yeah. Huzzah. That was way too much work. And then we aren't going to do the margin here. I guess we will leave a little bit of margin here. But we are going to do a bit of a margin of, I don't know, 5, 0. There, something like that. That was harder than it should have been, but we'll do that. We'll do that. And then format that thing for me, please. And then that hopefully looks a little nicer. Except for I stacked them all in the wrong column, which doesn't work. Put them there, put them there. There. Now we got a little bit better separation. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. And there is we do have this tab thing occurring between this bit and voltage, but that is an artifact there. So cleaner possible options here is simply going through and putting in a shared side scope. Now, the one thing that doesn't work well with this, and I was hoping to show an example of it, but it may be hard. See if I can collapse this up small enough where it then recreates it. It's not doing what, they're all too close to each other. They're all too close to each other. Okay, we're gonna go change one of these so that I can prove a point. Okay, so for example, great. Just need one to be, the text is just too close in size. Okay, so for example, I've made one insanely large. As we scroll down through here, you'll note all of a sudden it jumps. And the reason it jumps is because of virtualization. And you'll note now as I'm scrolling up, it's no longer there. And now it's back. Now if I just go down a little bit, still there, still there, still there, still there, still there. Here in a minute, we're going to jump again. Boom, and slides over. So this is one of the potential pitfalls of a shared size scope, combining it with a control that virtualizes. Because in order for shared size scope to work, it has to look at the grids, look at the sizes of those columns, and then figure out the appropriate sizing. With virtualization, what will happen is the list box items will get removed, which means those grids will no longer be there. This list still contains the same item. That item is still there, but it is no longer in existence inside of here. So that shared size scope is no longer being picked up, and therefore it now changes the size. So that is one of the pitfalls to be aware of. Now there's kind of some options as workarounds. In this case, it may not matter that much, right? That is so just straight up ignoring it may work, especially if the real data is going to be close in size to each of these things. It may not even be noticeable. Other options, you can turn off virtualization on your control. That works as well. And then the problem just kind of disappears a little bit, as it were. The other option is you can play around a bit with the sizing. Because these things are all set to auto, that's kind of why we're getting the behavior that we're seeing. Is these things are all just kind of shrinking to where they need to be. The other thing that's not really obvious, if you wanted to like align something right, actually let's do this in Snoop, I'll show this off, is these things are all sliding over. So let me finish my other thought. The other thing you can play around with is like, rather than width auto, you can play with min width, max width, which kind of helps constrain things down a little bit. Again, just keeps the jumping around a little. You can also not use auto. That's another option. But star sizing will get similar problems, because if a certain thing needs full sizing and the amount of full size is going to be a problem, as soon as you have any of those auto columns in the list, it potentially becomes problematic. But so for example, these ones here where we've got all this extra separation, if we go ahead and look here on our list box item, we can see that the list box item spans all the way from one side to the other, aside from the fact that my big head is in the way. But if we go inside to our grid, the one that actually contains our items, you'll note that the grid itself is rather small. So the grid is just over on the left. And if we realize, oh, well, hang on, I really want voltage right aligned, right? For example, maybe I say, okay, alignment should really be star sized. Well, I star size it and it doesn't move anywhere. It's like, well, hang on, shouldn't the grid be filling the whole space? Well, yes, but the grid is filling all of the space that's been given. The other thing to be aware of is on things like list box, list view, etc. List box, item, container style. One of the common things that you end up wanting to do here, style, target type, list, box item, based on serial design list box item. We don't want to lose our styling. Oh my word, Copilot, you are amazing. You are okay. You didn't close the tag. You write 95% of the line. You just suck at the rest. Let's see. Is that actually the right property? Or is it horizontal alignment? I think it's horizontal alignment that I actually want. I'm going to relaunch because I don't trust whatever the heck it just did. Okay, come across here. Let's see. It still didn't size it across. Why is it not sizing properly? Let's see. Horizontal alignment stretch. Horizontal alignment left. Let's see. Horizontal content alignment. Did Copilot actually get it right and the hot reload just failed? No. What is the property here that I'm missing? Item container style, data grid, list box item container style. Show me. Hey, no, give me. Let's see, this guy here is set. Because what I really want to see happen. Oh, hang on. Oh no, he is set properly. Now it should span. Yeah, and if I come down here, okay, good. Okay, so my grid is sizing across. Got it. Okay, so my grid is now sizing properly because now my grid does actually span all the way across. Okay, It's just that the shared size columns did not expand the way one would expect. Let's see. With 1 star, I would have expected you to pick up the remainder of the sizing. Am I just being stupid? Because position center should have been the alignment column. Am I missing something here? What am I missing? Why are you not, grid, why are you not doing what I expect you to do? Because I expect grid to... Why do you not get wider? There. Oh, and we've got a blank one at the bottom. Oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before. The subtle switch that I did to the end from the for loop is actually now picking up a value that we didn't want. That is a subtle bug with the for each option. I am mildly confused because before it was cutting itself off here. Why is this grid not doing grid things? Let's see, grid. The shared size scope. This thing has a lot at the end. Huh? Did I? Oh, because, okay. Sorry, it was sizing that way. There we go. Okay, so 1, don't be an idiot. Okay. Okay. Turn that back on. Okay, so the shared size scope is what is mucking with the star sizing. Hey, Izzy, welcome. I don't know if 6 a.m. is a good time to be out of bed. I would definitely prefer to be sleeping. I am mildly interested in this shared size scope and why this guy ends up sizing smaller. I'm sorry, I have to look this up now because, let's see, WPF grid is shared size scope. Ba-ba-bum. Let's go here. This guy here is, and I got a fancy new button that lets me copy links. It's awesome. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Columns and rows participating in share sizing do not respect star sizing. In this scenario, star sizing is treated as auto. So I guess that sort of makes sense because if you wanted star sizing, it doesn't really make sense for it to be a shared size scope. So if you want to do this properly, then you just set it that way and then push it across. And then you actually get the right behavior. Okay, that kind of makes sense because star sizing sort of implies that you're filling all of the space. And now you get something that looks a little bit more like this. Now, obviously, this is still bouncing because the first one is way longer, and then as soon as it falls off, it drops. Okay, back to the original question of if we have this sort of separation of items, what is a cleaner way to go through and separate them rather than trying to manipulate the data and using tabs and pipes and that kind of thing? Data grid, the other way of going about doing this is to just simply create multiple columns. So I think separating this apart so that like something like this, I don't know I don't think I would try to basically embed all of this content in the description attribute. Personally, if I was setting this thing up, I would probably go through and if I was going to decorate the enum, I would probably have separate attributes for each, which does then mean declaring a bunch of attributes and that kind of thing, and going through and doing it. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can skip this altogether, right? Like this is kind of interesting in the way this is set up. Because if I'm looking at this underscore G1 is kind of grid 1. And I can kind of, and I'm guessing GPC is position center. Like it doesn't position wobble left. So the other way you can almost go through and handle this is by breaking apart the enum and parsing it, because I'm trying to see filament small, filament large, and all of this kind of starts to fall out. Now, that assumes that you want to do that, but let's assume for the moment that we do. And actually, rather than doing this, we're going to change this guy up here to be like this. And then I would like to pass in the enum into the constructor instead. Nope, paste. Nope, not what I told you to do. Boom, there. Okay. Enum value. And let's just do enum value dot get description, just so that we can maintain previous behavior. And then this can just become position. But one of the things that we could look at doing, so let's do public enum value. Come down here and we go enum value gets enum value. So one thing that I often prefer doing in my view models is have the view model surface up the data that the view needs, not necessarily the exact display of that data. And the issue with these descriptions is this is surfacing up both the data and how it should be displayed versus just surfacing up the data itself. One very simple option here would be to go through and say, you know what? Really all we want to do is surface up the enum, and then we'll go ahead and parse this thing apart as we see fit. Right? We parsed apart the string inside of this, but another option is to say, you know what? Rather than binding to filament, what we could do is bind to enum value instead, which is clearly not showing up probably because I'm debugging and would have to recompile. Is we could bind to the enum value instead and then just value converter it. So for example, rather than doing the filament property, because filament is just parsing this guy here, if we come over here and we do add new item, let's see, filament converter, something, and then do the needful because bad value converter. I think this project has nullable reference types turned on because it's using my template. Build props, nullable enabled. Excellent. So something to know about with WPF when you have nullability enabled. The WPF libraries were never decorated for nullability. So the 3 states, not the 2. Most people think that once you have nullability turned on, everything's in one of 2 states, nullable or not nullable. There's a 3rd state, unknown. And in reality, a much better way of decorating these is something like this. Now, technically, somebody could still shove a null through the target type. Functionally, in the framework, that's not going to happen. So unless somebody's using your converter outside of it, it's unlikely to happen. So if value is insert enum type here, enum value, let's see, enum get name, enum value, and then we're going, we can just be even better. Just keep going. Is enum name and enum name split on underscores is, and this is where the pattern match comes. Discard character string filament dot dot dot. Yeah. So just to reiterate, this pattern, this will so this one, if the value is the enum type, great. Get the name if that is non-null, because this is an empty property pattern match. Stored in enum name. Split enum name on underscores. As long as that split results in an array where we're going to ignore the first item, the second item we're going to store in the string filament, and then we don't care about the rest. Some number of items down there, whatever. And then we are going to return filament switch. If I learn how to spell switch. And then the only values I saw in there were FL and FS, I think. Yeah. So FL returns, let's see, large filament. Yeah. Boom. And then FS, small filament. Okay, Copilot, finish the rest. Sure, that'll work. Thank you. You're great. You're great, Copilot. And then here we're just going to return null, I guess. I don't care. So what we can do here is we can come back up to this option, and we can do something like user control resources, filament converter, like that. And then this is going to want local for the namespace. Come down here. And then rather than doing all of that stuff, we can go with converter, static resource, filament converter. Now, the subtle advantage of this is that now our view models can go back to being kind of dumb. And you'll note the ideal situation is we can't tell the difference, which it appears to be working. Method or name is not implemented. Oh, I probably got in, yeah, the NB one. Haha. So that is fun. So we're just going to return empty string. We should probably limit out that last one. And we go here. There we go. And now it no longer breaks. Huzzah. And we're going to come back over here, and I'm going to just filter. Let's do where x is x not equal to grid voltage nota bene. Because I can only assume Latin. Because that makes sense. I don't know if it's intended to be Latin, but that's what I read when I see NB. Those people who don't know Latin, nota bene is often used in legal speak, means note well, pay attention, etc. So something slightly akin to this. So rather than, I guess the big idea here is rather than having your view model surface up how the data should be displayed, and this is a very subtle difference, but having your view model surface up the data to be displayed and letting the view figure out how to display it. Now, is that better? Is that easier? I think there's a big it depends inside of there. But versus doing this tab alignment and pipes, I very much do like the idea of shared size scoped grids to be able to go through and lay those things out. That would be my approach. For data grid, you probably don't want to do a shared size scope with a data grid as much as just breaking it apart into multiple columns. That would probably be my suggestion. So you'd end up with something like data grid text column binding. Let's see, what were we doing? Filament was the first one. So you end up with something like this, and you could even do something like can user sort false if you wanted, and not even set a header. Like that is technically an option here. And you can see right now, this is where the small filament is showing up, because data grid is by definition already grid layout, and there's no reason. And if you do a binding to a read-only property in a data grid, you should really mode one way and or is read-only. Right? Depending on how you want to go about doing this. I imagine, based upon the fact that this is coming from the enum description, that the implicit nature of this is one way, that the user's not supposed to be editing it, but who knows? That could just be a default starting point. Right? So now you end up with something of this nature. Now, some people may not like the way that it does individual cell selection, but you can, just like in the discussion on the previous stream of the data grid, you can change your selection setup, hide that, whatever you need. So that would be my go-to there. Okay, one second. Let me check checking things. Let's see. Options for how to display enum descriptions in the data grid. Yes. So I think this is kind of where I would end up going. And then that also lines up nicely with how to go through and lay things out. The one other thing I will point out is sometimes if you don't like the selection, the material design library does offer you the option for hiding the selection in your list box. Another common approach that people do is they put a scroll viewer around an items control. The disadvantage with that approach is you lose virtualization. So take into account whether you expect to have a huge number of items or not. Sometimes you don't expect to have more than maybe a few dozen items, and whatever. Either one's perfectly fine. If you're going to have 3,000, you might consider something that virtualizes it. Let's see, Alex. It's for number. I come from embedded world. I mostly program in C, and sometimes we do slap the enum of our enum. And B for number. That gives us the C advantage for loops. Oh, okay. Got it. Also, the use short is because of the embedded. Marshalling to transform the use short of the array of bytes to send serialize to the MCU. Okay. In that situation, that is an excellent time to go through and actually use a use short. Now, there may still be a question of whether you want it to be a use short at the view model layer or just at the model layer. But that can be a later thing to figure out, because sometimes you will change data types up at the, especially in a WPF app, up at the UI layer. I built a WPF app at one point in time that was interfacing with a bunch of stepper motors for an industrial printer. And down when we actually got to doing like the COM port writing and serial stuff, there was a lot of things that were very intentional about laying out the bytes, because things like endianness start to matter a lot. And so down at my model layer, I definitely converted into various different types to lay things out. But often at the view model layer, I would still go back to just like a regular int, because there was no benefit there. So, but it depends a little bit on what you're doing, and it may not be an optimization that is worth doing right away, but it is worth noting that if you're using a use short higher up, you're probably actually hurting yourself, not helping yourself. But again, sometimes it is worthwhile for like validation. So like if you bind a text box to a byte property and then you try to type in 40,000, it's not going to work because it can't send 40. Like the type converter can't get 40,000 to fit into a byte. So occasionally that can be helpful too, but oftentimes I prefer to do validation with like max min ranges rather than data types. Okay, cool. Sorry, I want to go back to your message that you sent me before and see. Got it. Okay, so the other question then here was around the collection in the view model. So down here, right now, this is an observable collection. And the idea was, in theory, we could get this thing down to be really, really small. If we wanted to, we could get this thing down to actually just be something like public list of enum values. And you can actually do this, and then you can even get real crazy and just do new enum. Well, actually, you can just do this. I could type it again, or I could just copy and paste. Right? And if you got down to just this point here, where you know that this is the sum total of all your values, this totally works. What you will end up doing though is you'll end up going the value converter route, because if this guy were to bind, let's see here, because this was enum values, make that plural. If we come over here and change this guy's item source to enum values, what ends up happening is this guy converts. The other bindings are all going to fail, but we're just going to ignore those for the moment. Is you can then get something like this that then ends up working. So your view model then ends up just straight up being a list of your enums, just surfacing the data that's important. So in this case, show me all the enum values, and it's not even all the enum values, it's all of them except the number. So in that case, it gets you really, really close. And if all you ever want is this set, and this is the sum total of everything that needs to go in there, this will work perfectly fine. The big disadvantage here will be, it looks like you want enum plus this value to go along with it. And so there may still be some, pun intended, value in having this grid voltage view model as an object, but it ends up really just being a holder for an enum plus a value. You end up dropping position. This thing can be read-only, because if you're only ever going to change a property in the constructor, you don't need to take the additional hit of making it observable. It can just be a read-only property. Same with the collection down here. If you never plan to add or remove items from this list, it can just be a regular list. The moment you want to do any sort of list manipulation, you probably want it to be an observable collection. Now, you technically can get away with mutating this list and then just raising property change. So for example, down here, you could do, base, is it raise, set, on property changed. So you can do something like this, and, so change the items in enum values. So you can mutate the list, raise property changed, which tells the WPF engine, hey, new value here, go through and change it. There's a couple weird gotchas with this though. So for example, if all you do is like, I guess let's do, let's do this. I don't know, enum values, how about remove at, and we're going to remove it 0, and for int I equal to 0, I less than, I can't type, I less than 20, I plus plus, right? We're just gonna nuke out the top 20 items. Okay, so we come here. So we've got a list. It's not easy to see because we have a bunch of small filament ones. We're going to see how often. So if I do receive data, right? I've now removed all the elements, but we never saw the list update. Secretly, what ends up happening, even though you raise property change, the binding engine behind the hood will be watching this to know, hang on, this is still the same instance. I'm good. I've got the same instance. It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't update the collection. So if you do end up owing something like this, you actually end up needing to do something like enum values gets new enum values. Functionally clone it. Let's see. Set. And now if we do this, and then boop, and you can watch the little scroll by there. Boop, boop. Yeah, we end up deleting stuff off, and now we're back into a functional state. So if you do go around the route of manually raising property changed, you have to watch out for the subtle cases where things are equal but different. Because just raising property changed doesn't actually mean go and update. It means go and check if you need to update. Which is why we try to avoid raising property change until we need it. So you can kind of get away with this approach, but at a certain point, the question becomes why when you could just make it an observable collection? It's much simpler to work with. So, so if you wanted to get away with it, but you'd lose like this grid value thing, and I suspect you actually probably want to keep that floating around. Otherwise, what would this numeric up down go with? So we can actually come over here and I guess I would have to bind it to the other collection. So there. Let's see. I think I have hit most of these. Alex, if you're still there, is there anything else you were hoping for me to cover on this one? I'm just reading through the chat in Discord really quick to see if there's anything else that I've missed. My mouse is not doing what I want it to do. Because I thought it would. Yeah, I think that may cover the stuff I was looking for. I think so. No problem. And thank you for the opportunity of being able to review an actual app. So for anybody else watching this video or the recording later, if you've got something and you would like a code review on it, I can't always guarantee how quick I will get to things, but I do very much enjoy doing code reviews and looking at actual apps, because that's where the real coding actually happens, rather than in my own contrived examples. Because real apps have real problems and real constraints and real things, and the problems are much more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to close that. Okay, so there was one other thing. That came out of the close this. That came out of the drawer host discussion from the other stream, and I want to do something here. So mkdir, let's see, drawer navigation. See, drawer navigation, .NET new. Oh, you know you've used your template too much when it automatically fills it in for you. Ooh, let's grab the new one. There's a new version of my template. So, and I will demonstrate what it does here in just a moment. RM star. Yes. Did you kill it all? Thanks. Let's see. Now build me sudo make me an app. Okay. So, the one thing I did go and fix in the template was something that I had come across in a stream a little while back. I'll just highlight that real quick, and then we'll go into the actual drawer stuff. So inside of your app.xaml CS, if you've been paying close attention, I changed up the way the main method is being invoked, specifically so that the generic host has an opportunity to call stop async. This is important if you end up with something like a hosted service where you need to make sure you do cleanup in it. You will note I have done something potentially horrendous here. However, if you create an async main method, this is the code that gets generated for you behind the scenes. So the deadlock case is not quite the same when you are at the top level event handler. Now, you'll also note you have to decorate it with STA thread, because if you try to use an async main and you put this attribute on top of your async method, it will not propagate to the actual main method. The last thing, and I didn't realize this until I came across it, your main method doesn't have to be public. I've always thought it had to be public. Turns out, works just fine as a private main method. Who would have thunk? So, all of this cleanup, all to just call stop async. Like, that is the literal sum total of this. And then if you turn on analyzers, you will get flagged for this. But I decided I actually preferred having this in here and explicit and making people remove it if they crank their analyzer up. Configure await true is the default. You should never need to explicitly specify it. I felt like it was important here to make it obvious that I really, really, really want to be clear that this is expected to continue on in the same execution context that we came in on, which is the entry point, i.e. STA thread, UI thread. Do the UI stuff on the UI thread. So just because. So that's the big thing, is just so that this stop async appropriately gets called. Okay, so but if you want to update your template or your apps, that's the change. You can always grab in, if you're ever curious what the differences are on the template. One, commit any working changes to your repo, because I'm hoping everybody uses source control. Next, update the template, and then just run .NET new and do a -f on it, so that it forces overwrite, and then just look at the diff. And then you'll be off to the races. Okay, so let's go here. So the other thing that came out of it was from the drawer host, the idea of wanting to build out something very similar to how the demo app works, where you have a drawer on the left, and not too unlike the last app that we looked at, and there's a set of kind of navigation items available to you, and you want to be able to click on one of those and have it do the navigation. Now, this was one of the things that I had contemplated wanting to build out as a way of showing off my template to have some navigation models. So I figured, let's build that out. But I'm going to fire the demo app up real quick, and we will take a look at it. Cool. Stop. Why are we hitting breakpoints? Go. Okay, there we are. Okay, so here, this thing here, click, navigate. Here, click, navigate. That's the sum total of what we're going for. Okay, so that's functionally what we kind of want to build out. Now, the only thing that gets a little awkward is I don't know if everybody necessarily wants, like, the position of this hamburger menu and the interaction of this drawer host is a matter of, I'm sure, debate among people. But I think a better thing to do, so we're going to we're going to build something out that works and then go from there. So let's see here. Let's do this, and we are going to do a color zone. Come on, find it. Thank you. Great. Okay, and then inside of here, we will do a grid. Actually, I guess we don't even need a grid. We can just do a dock panel. And then we want to basically poach a bunch of stuff from the demo app, I think. I may change my mind here in a minute. But we want to build out this thing. So there's our drawer host. This is what I want. I want you. So I want a toggle button. Dock panel, dock top, new. In this case, I want you to dock left. Pretty please. Thanks. And then this is... Got it. So there's two toggle buttons. There's the one that is here, and there's the one that is here. And they just interact with each other like that. So, and then we do need then a drawer host. Give me one, pretty please. And then we're going to put all of you guys inside of here. Because the other question is, where does that go in relationship to a menu? If you have a menu, does the drawer go inside or outside the menu? I think the drawer host actually goes over the menu. I think we're gonna do this. And again, this is the part of debate where I could see people going, I don't like that. Sure, fine. It's a template. Change it. So I'm going to put you inside. You're going to go over the top. And actually, I think what I might do is move the menu down, grid row 1, and move the color zone up. Now, strictly speaking, you don't actually have to rearrange these controls, but from a sanity standpoint, the order of your XAML determines things like Z order, and will affect your tab index. So lay out your XAML in the same manner and you will get a bunch of stuff for free. Okay, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. I don't know why I left this row at the bottom and then never put anything in it. I should delete that off the template. Or use it. Could use it for something. Okay, so there's that, there's that. We're gonna just burn that off since we aren't using it. And then in our drawer host, we would like to do left drawer content. And then we are going to do, I guess we can do the dock panel. I'm not used to doing this dock panel stuff. It's very weird. Let's see, last child fill false. And in this case, we're going to grab another toggle button, slap it up here. At some point, we're going to have to pick one of these things to drive. And I'm somewhat tempted. Let's see, menu toggle button is checked. I'm thinking what we're actually going to do is xname drawer host. And we're going to do is left drawer open and go something more akin to that. That way that lines up a little nicer. And this goes here. And let's see here, horizontal alignment, that one should be right. You don't need a horizontal alignment because you're being docked left. Format, thank you. Let's see, and then down here, we are going to do a list box because we're going to want to control the selection. And let's just steal from our demo app because we can. This is going to not be quite what we want, but it'll get us close. Let's do this here, format. Okay, let's see. So a couple things we can clean up. We can do that. I don't really want to give it a name unless I have to. I don't care about automation properties. The item source we're going to need to deal with. That we're going to need to deal with. Selection we're going to need to deal with. We're just going to do that for now. Let's see. And then having a minimal scroll bar style seems very reasonable. And then we're going to have to set a data template here at some point, but for now we don't need it. Okay. So this gets us into here. And now this is the first point of contention of how do we want to build out our navigation. This is one of the areas where MAUI applications actually are really cool. They're cool and horrible all at the same time. .NET MAUI shell. So one of the things that they give you is this concept of an app shell, and they're trying to accomplish something slightly different than what I'm trying to accomplish here. But the idea is you can lay out and get this kind of drawer host slides out, pick on the thing, trigger navigation, and off to the races. But they also allow you to set up kind of this top level thing, because inside of your app, one of the first decisions you will often make is how do you want to lay out the navigation? Because your app will probably have more than one view. The user will probably need to navigate between them. There may be dialogues, there may be, pop-up controls or snack bars or that kind of thing that pull out. But you can then take this shell, declare your flyout items, and then the important part here is these individual items contain the content template, and they then just wire it up for you. WPF, there's no such fanciness here. You have to end up building it yourself. But it is kind of a nicety little thing. So for example, inside of your shell, if you put these little route things on here, it'll go through and do it. And for people who build spa applications, this should probably feel really familiar to you, because you end up with this nice little route that looks just like a little URI thing that gets passed around. And oh, look, we register these routes and everything just magically works. Again, cool and terrifying and kind of yucky all at the same time. Like I kind of get what you're going for, but ugh. Like this is not as clean as what I would like in a lot of cases. But you know what? Whatever. Because it gives you things like pop the stack with ... Like that's pretty like some things are stupidly easy. And other things are slightly more complicated, like, oh, I just want to pass one of my objects around. Yeah, no, you don't. So things like that. So good, bad. That's how MAUI does it. Okay, let's take back to my drawer navigation. So I think what we're going to do is probably create us up a new view model first, of sorts. And this is where I'm trying to decide how much do you build out. Let's see. So public class. How about navigation item? Yeah, that sounds fine. Public string title. Public type, I don't know, content type. You can kind of see that this is going to feel a little MAUI-esque. Let's see. And then this guy here, we're going to do something like public list navigation items. And I'm intentionally just doing this as a read-only list because this is not something I anticipate changing during the life of the application. All right, this is going to be something I set once. I may change it, but any changes to this are going to very much be done only at a single point. So we're going to do new, and we'll do page 1. Type of main window view model. And for now, we're going to come back and change this in a minute. I've been using data templates in my app.xaml for the different views. Is this recommended? It's not bad. So there's definitely I think it's going to come down to a little bit of how you lay it out and organize it. So the only disadvantage of putting everything at the application root is this resource dictionary has to be loaded before your app starts. So the more you put in here, the longer your launch time. If you aren't running into issues with launch time or any of that stuff, it works fine. The other question about putting it here is a matter of organization. And does it make sense from an organizational management standpoint? It's probably fine. Oftentimes, I like to break things into sub-resource dictionaries and maybe reference them up here. Doesn't fix the load time problem, but it fixes the organization problem. So it's is it recommended? Depends on your app, and I'd say it's not bad as long as it's organized well and you aren't. If you aren't running into issues of startup time being long, it's not that bad. But what to do instead? Good question. So the other way to go about doing it. So one, I like organizing things into resource dictionaries. And usually organizing them into resource dictionaries based upon kind of vertical slices of my application. So here in a moment, we're about to have multiple pages for kind of different views of our application. Oftentimes, different views will end up being vertical slices. So when you start thinking about the navigation model of your application, like if you imagine an app with 3 tabs, each tab is potentially a nice vertical slice of functionality inside your application. Probably. Again, depends on your app. But organize them into resource dictionaries there, and then only bring those resource dictionaries in when you need them. Now, it does get a little challenging because the with what we're about to show, there's going to be certain places where that may not work because at the end of the day, you're looking for a data template resolution that functionally needs to be at the top level. Now, ideally, you can bring it down tighter, but sometimes if you're doing like the tab style navigation, it's only going to be known at the main window. Okay, go ahead and bring it in. Let's see. A bit late to the party with question as running to catch a train to work. Virtualization was the phrase used. And there's 2 types of virtualization, UI virtualization and data virtualization. Often in WPF, we are talking about UI virtualization. So the idea that it, like a list box, won't create more list box items than it needs, or a data grid won't create more data grid rows than it needs for what's currently being displayed, regardless of how big your backend collection is. The video recently, I think it's 1 back, that dives into data grid. I talk about it a little bit. For most controls, it is on by default, but if we do virtualization, this page here, let me just make sure it is the thing here. Yes. This one here, oh, I love my new copy button. This one goes into it in more detail. It is slightly different depending on which control you're using. In general, you can turn it on and not worry about it too much. But there are things to watch out for. Like earlier in this video, we were talking about grid shared size scope. It can, when you turn on virtualization, it can cause some occasionally unintended or undesirable behavior when it's only creating enough items. It also is worth knowing about virtualization. I was doing some work on an app earlier today where it was using a list view, and the code that I was replacing had previously assumed that it could iterate through all of the list view items to find what it needed. Well, the problem is I had turned on virtualization, which meant I couldn't iterate through the visual tree in order to get it to set, in order to get it to work right. So you have to set a mix height on the window control to make virtualization work. You have to make sure that your control isn't just exploding in size. That was the problem at the beginning, where the data grid was inside of a scroll viewer, and the scroll viewer was letting the data grid get as big as it wanted. Most of the time with WPF, controls will default to a horizontal and vertical alignment of stretch, which means they're only going to fill the space of their containing of the item that contains them. So most of the time you don't necessarily need to set a max height, because they're going to stretch and fill, maybe the main window if they're at the root. And the main window may change size. But you're right, if it is allowed to size to its content, that will break you. So things to watch out for is like grid row height auto is a great one that usually breaks it, because now it gets too big. Sometimes it gets obvious, because when you add in a bunch of items into your control, you expect to see a scroll bar and you don't get one. It's like, oh, well, why isn't it scrolling? Well, it's because the thing's too big. So it's because the UI virtualization is really a feature of the scroll viewer that is contained within those controls, because the scroll viewer knows how many items are within its view, in its window, versus how many there are total. So when items are cycling through as you scroll up and down, it's what's taking that item, recycling it around, and rehydrating it appropriately. If you want a deep dive into it, the tree list view videos that I did for the material design in XAML, I spent a great deal of time fighting with the virtualization. I think it's probably, you can skip videos 1 and 2, I think. I think it starts with 3. I think. Might have to double check that. But yes, setting a max height, or setting a fixed height, I think might be a better way of saying it, and not allowing it to size to its content. Okay, we were going to do this, 2, 3, and then we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then we're going to come back over here. We're going to go here, here, here. That goes there, and then now that we have a object to work with, we can do this. We can do navigation item, boom. That goes like that. I don't know why we have that set. And then this is going to be something like title. I don't know if I like that margin, but we're going to go with it for the moment. Seems a little big. Let's see what it looks like. And this is one of those areas where I've been contemplating maybe even doing a second WPF template that has like this full thing built out a little more. Okay, looks a little awkward. It's clearly not lined up correctly, but at least the buttons work. So the toggle buttons do what I expect. The menu looks weird. This header is off. Let's see, mode, primary light, nah, primary mid. Do that maybe. Yeah, let's do primary light. Just so it's a little different from the button color. Suppose we could go primary dark. I don't know. I'm gonna spend all my time just figuring out what the appropriate thing is. I don't know. I kind of like the dark. I don't know. Okay, that goes there. Let's see. So this one here, this was dock panel left, and it should have been top, because that's inside of the drawer host. That's dock panel left. So let's check this. There. That gets me to there. And this ends up... This is kind of an awkward margin here that I'm not real sure I like. I'm somewhat tempted to just do this as 4 all the way around. See what that looks like. That feels nicer to me. And then I think what we might actually do is stack panel orientation horizontal. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Copilot. Okay, Copilot, you've earned your keep. Fine, I'll keep using you. But only because you've made it really awesome, and I love that. Public pack icon. Look at you, Copilot. Look at you go. Pack icon. You want to write the code for me? Thanks. Okay, so we're gonna slap a couple icons in here. Pack icon. They're like a. Oh, this is not the right pack icon kind. Come on, Copilot, you let me type the wrong thing. How could you? Let's see. I think we're gonna do like a smiley. And then, because that's clearly what page 1 will be, is the smiley face. Page 2 should probably be like a palette. Yeah, that sounds great. And then page 3 is clearly a snowman. Ooh, snowflake. And that's tempting. No, snowman. Snowman is definitely the right answer. Okay. I'll play with this for a moment, and then I think we're going to slap a little bit of a margin or a min width on this guy. Yeah, that looks nice. I think what I want to do is slap a min width on this guy. Min width of like 250. A little big. Let's go a little smaller. What's 200 look like? I like that better. Okay. Yeah, and maybe at some point we want to put something else on the top up there, because this kind of is a bit of a dead area. Not sure I like so much of a dead area, but whatever. Let's see, and then this, I don't like that being nearly that high off. That just left lots of dead space, and honestly, I think I might just get rid of this altogether. Yeah, there's already enough space around this thing with a 16. Let's bring you down a lot. Thinking 4 was too much. There, I like the idea of 8. Shrink this guy up a little more, get it a little tighter. Yeah, that looks a little better. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, great. Something like that, something like that, something like that. Okay. Great. Okay, so we've got that, we've got that. Let's move you to your own, move to navigation item. And then we're going to do something like, let's see, observable property, private, oh, fine. You want to, okay, Copilot. I'm going to stop helping you, Copilot. Just do all the work. Just a freaking show off, Copilot. Just a freaking show off. Did you actually get that right? Yeah, you did. You did. Okay. And then I think what we're going to do here is inside the dock, I'm going to do something like text block. Let's see. Dock panel, dock top. And this may or may not line up nicely. Boy, we might just do this as a grid. I'm just worried that it's going to allocate space and not center. So horizontal alignment left. And then we're going to go here. Horizontal alignment center. Let's see. Vertical alignment center. And then I want to do style. Material design, text. Let's do like headline 3, I guess. And then text gets binding. Hey. Title. Like that. Because what I expect now is that when I click here, page 1, page 2, page 3. Okay, that's a little big. 5. Better. Okay, so we'll do that. And then the only other thing that I kind of want to happen is when an item is selected from the list box, kind of want this left drawer to close. Is left drawer open? Binding is left drawer open. So navigation, I think, should close the drawer is going to be what I decree. We're going to go with another observable property, private pool. What did I call that? Is left drawer open? I don't know if I should call it. I guess I kind of have to call it something with drawer. Is navigation drawer open. I don't like calling it left drawer because that really, like, what if I move the navigation to the right? Should this property have to change? Add the page icon to that. Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you. We will do that. Let's see. Boom. Do that. And then if we come down here, because I kind of want to put them together. Let's do stack panel orientation horizontal, because I want this thing to actually be what is horizontally centered. And so we'll move this guy up here. And then we'll do a pack icon, kind, binding icon. And so I know icon's not going to work, right? That's not going to work, but watch this trick. Watch this trick. Data context, binding, boom. Yeah. Booyah. Something like that. And now when we're gonna have to fix a little bit of this. Let's see, width, I don't know, 30, height 30. We're gonna want this thing a little bigger, and we're gonna want to put a little bit of space on the right. I don't know, maybe 15. Let's see how that looks. So we're gonna have to deal with the unknown case. That's okay. Okay, so that worked. Except for this guy really needs a vertical alignment so that he lines up nicely. Horizontal alignment is no longer relevant. Okay, that's a little better. The 15 is probably a little big. Let's dial that down to like an 8. It's not bad. That's not bad. But at least then the sum total of this width is what gets centered. Because I don't want it to do like one and then the other. That just feels weird. Okay. That gets me to there. Okay, so we've got this is navigation drawer open. We are going to come over here and go with, let's see, partial on selected navigation changed. I don't need the old value. I want to just set is navigation drawer open. No, Copilot, I said the opposite. How can you not interpret my intent? Bad Copilot. Okay, so we go here, we go here. There, now when we click, it moves us around appropriately. Not bad. Not bad, not bad. Okay, so that gets us in there. I think the other thing we should probably do is select a navigation item, get navigation item sub 0, is we should probably default ourselves to a page, because you really should never be empty. That works. Okay. That is a weird looking snowman. Like, just think about that. Normally people put like branches. Let's see. Why not private field uppercase? Because this is the Visual Studio default and what most of the world is used to. What to do? Okay. So now the question comes of dealing with this content type, because at the end of the day, what we would like to do is swap out the contents of these. So let's actually create up a couple things. And again, my mild preference here is to group things by vertical slices. So we're going to do something like counter, right? So we will go through and we're going to add in a user control. Counter view. Come on. Thank you. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to go with add class counter view model. Something like that. Do something like that. And let's see, that's going to go there. That goes there. Yeah, so we're going to migrate out some of the stuff that was previously in here before. So we're going to do the actual incrementer. So this guy needs to become partial. He needs to derive from observable object. What's your problem? Yeah, you don't see the command yet. Yeah, I know you don't see the command. Calm. We will get there. Get there. Boom. There. Happier now? Should we be using sealed on view models? I don't think the answer is related to view models specifically. I think the question can be more generally answered of, should you seal your class? There is a small performance benefit from having a sealed class, because when you seal a class, well, we'll back up. When you invoke a method that is virtual, there is a lookup that has to occur where it works up the object hierarchy, figuring out what is the appropriate method to actually invoke. When a class is sealed, it means it can't be derived from, and functionally puts an end to that chain. So when doing the lookup, it knows I can stop here. I don't need to keep going. So there is a mild amount of performance to be gained from sealing up a class. Sometimes people seal classes because there is some bit of functionality that they want to be able to assume, and they don't want anything deriving from the class and being able to override some bit of behavior. So there's occasionally a time there. That one I think you have to be really careful of and really sure of your domain. In general, though, if you're doing app level development, most of the time you know all your derived classes. And so if you would like to seal the things up to gain that small performance bump, it's not a bad idea. Especially for things that are non-public, that are internal. In general, you can seal them without much risk, because it's an internal class. You should know all of the derived classes. It does, sealing everything as kind of like a default setting does end up causing some amount of problems and risks, because if you use any of the mocking frameworks that rely on something like Castle Dynamic Proxy, for example, mock, M-O-Q, will do this, where it automatically generates a derived class of something. The moment you mark it as sealed, you will subtly change that behavior. So if you use mock and you use a concrete type, so that you can do things like do setups on virtual methods, what it does is it generates a derived class for you and then overrides all those virtual members so that you can do your setups and verifies and all that stuff on it, which is great. The moment you make it sealed, it can't do that anymore. So you do have to be mildly cautious when I say you should know all your derived classes. Consider your testing frameworks as well, and if they might be dynamically creating it. If you are a library developer, be cautious on sealing everything. Xamarin did this in Xamarin Forms, and it was the biggest annoyance because everything was internal sealed, and it was very difficult when you wanted to leverage things, because the moment you seal it, you're effectively telling everybody that you know every possible use case and that there isn't any that should derive from this class. That may or may not be a good assumption. Like, as a library developer, it's kind of hard to justify and say, yes, I know that no one should be deriving from this. Like, there will be no derived classes. Maybe, like, as somebody who has put out a bunch of different libraries, I can assure you, your users will find use cases for classes that you had no idea they were going to use them for. It's kind of like when you build an app and your users do something random. When you build a library, the people consuming the library will basically do the same thing. It's great. So long answer to what was probably a simple question. Should we be using sealed on view models? And the answer is probably. It's not a bad idea, but it should be worth noting why you're doing it. It's either to potentially gain a small performance bump, or because there is some functionality that you want to ensure is never overridden. Okay. Small detour. Okay, down to here. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just slap that in there. And then I'm going to set up my design time data context. Let's see, design instance type, counter view model. And at present, it's design time creatable, so we'll do that. And then this should give me a nice, let's see. Right. So these tests are now broken. Add new folder, counter, and I think we can solve this test problem by really just renaming this thing to be counter view model test, because really that's what we're about to test instead. So change. Telecode, you are weird. Okay. Because we just moved all the functionality, so the test can move down there. We can do something more like that. Okay. So there's that. There's that. Great. Okay. And that gets us into there. That gets us into there. This gets us into here. Okay. Now, this is where things are going to take a wacky turn. Is when an item is selected, we end up needing to go through and do something, right? With this type of layout, our main window has more or less become that same app shell, like what we looked at a second ago with Maui. Its purpose in life is to hold on to the individual navigation items and then render them appropriately. We haven't actually gotten to the rendering appropriately part. Here, let's do that. Content control. Let's see, grid row 1. Is that right? No, 2. I've already forgotten what. Yeah, 2. There we go. Okay, so this is going to be the one that actually contains our content. So the naive approach here, right, is content binding selected navigation item content type. Boom. This mildly works, except for the fact that it's not actually resolving our view model. So you can see it's just beep, beep. So let's first fix this up. Let's call this guy counter, and then this is going to be counter view model. And then this guy, boom, so something like that. And people have built various frameworks to go through and do this kind of stuff. Something like Prism is one of the first examples that comes to mind of something that has tried to put order around the lack of the fact that WPF lets you do whatever you want. But unfortunately, that also means that you have to do whatever you want. So, okay. But our question then here is, how do we want to go through and handle this? There are a couple ways to go through and do it. And there's actually, let me see if I can find it. There's a really great sample for things that I wanted to go through and show. So one option is inside of the on navigation item change, because we have this new item here. One of the things that we could do is we could create a new property, and rather than binding our content control to selected navigation item, we could actually bind it to that new property, and then in here, create view model, and then, assign view model to new property, and then that new property gets bound into the content control, and then we go ahead and let the or then we create data templates for all of our top level things and map them through. I assume this is kind of what you were driving at earlier, JC, with how you would set yours up. Is there's some sort of layout here that definitely works. I'm trying to decide if I want to go that route or if I want to do something different. So one option that's available to me is something similar to what we did with main window view model. Is we have this option here, right? This is a nice setup, but the reason this setup works is because the constructor for this view is actually being resolved from our DI container. Works great. The disadvantage here is it means that the DI container is what's creating all of these, and there's no good way to pass data around, but that's probably okay. Probably okay. It makes doing things like parent-child relationships a little more interesting, but maybe we'll start that route. So yeah, because I am wondering if a better thing to do, because we have to put something on this navigation item to know what the thing goes to. Xamarin Forms, they have this as basically a relative URL, and then that URL gets mapped to some other view somewhere else. That's an option. I don't know if I like that option, but it's an option. I think what I like doing, okay, hear me out. I think what I like doing is counter view model. I think I like this option here. I think is set this guy up where it's something more like this, and then DI resolve the view and bring that thing across. Which means that what I put on the navigation item is probably wrong for content type. And now I'm trying to decide what's the proper way to set these things up? Like, how do we want to set these things up? It's a very interesting problem. Very interesting problem of how do we want to, and this is why it's hard to do a generalized solution. Because this is, like, I could do view type here, right? This is a thing that could happen. The problem is then this means this is counter view, whereas this approach is, so there's the view model first, and then there's the view first approach, right? You can come at it from either side. If you do the view model approach, you end up needing data templates to do the resolution. If you do the view first approach, you end up having to do something funky in your view, and it's also going to require a fun DI trick here in a minute. But then you also have this issue of how does a view model communicate an item without tightly coupling itself to the view itself? I don't know the right answer. I don't know. I'm just going to do this because I don't know of a good one. I don't know of a good other way to do this at the moment. And so, you know what? We're going this route. Yeah, do that. And then I think this is where I got tripped up on before when we started doing this, is trying to decide and build this out, because every app is a little different, and does this work everywhere? This will fall apart if you want to have a hierarchical navigation structure. This is also probably a bad choice if you want a stack, right? In our case, we're just going to assume none of that's a thing. Okay, so yeah, but this is sample. This is sample. This is sample. Okay. Okay. I'm also questioning if doing these things inside of, if building this list up inside of main window is the best place to do this. But you know what? We are stuck here. Let's see. Is there a... Let's do a calculator icon. We got a counter. Counting. That's math. Calculators are math. Done. All right. Okay. So our navigation item now contains an enum. We want to go with a view first approach. And by we want to, we are going to, because reasons. There was a thing here I was going to go see if I could find, because I think Nikolai had a really clever way around this. That will yeah. Let's see here. There is, because there is this issue here. Those people who want to see it. But in my case, we are probably going to leverage this guy. Let's see. We will see, but I think this is where we may end up going. And I think this initial issue here links back to a technique in here. Let's see. Well, the navigation piece, once it, there's also tabs with their own content. So in this case, I'm just doing top level because I personally like top level a little better. This guy here. Yeah, so this guy gets built up. And then this, I wanted to steal Nikolai's work here. He used a source generator to do the work, but what I was looking for is the sample app. That's what I want. I want the user control setup because this is the desire here. This thing generates an overloaded constructor that then invokes this one. So this guy here ends up doing something along the lines of this, and then we're gonna go and grab let's see here. I want this file. It's not plagiarism if you steal from yourself. And then there's probably a bad name for it, but whatever. Going with it for the moment. And then fix the namespace. Yeah. Okay, so this does something horribly bad that we'll come back to in a minute. Yeah. Yeah, something horribly bad that we'll come back to in a minute. But we need it to do the horribly bad thing because it's important. And we're going to do that guy there inside of our app.xaml. And there. Okay. That works. Now we're wired up. And now we can come over here and we can do something like di get service. And do this. I almost want to have a get required service. We're going to do that just so that I can have it get required service, and we're going to make UB non-nullable, and we are literally just going to do get service of T. Throw new invalid operation exception. Could not resolve service. Let's see. Type of T. Full name. Boom. Good enough. Okay. Simple, easy mode. And then I don't think I need that anymore. We should probably do something because we've also now broken the designer by doing this. But you know what? Yeah. We won't stress too much about that for the moment. Okay, now last thing we need to do is when navigation changes, we need to go through and actually create the appropriate view. And I think for that, we are going to do, I think we'll just do a value converter. I think. Let's see. Resolve navigation item converter. That's a very long name. But we're going to go through and do it. New item. Resolve navigation item converter. Boom. fix this, fix this, fix this, clean that up, implement that, clean up the nullability on these because WPF is not decorated. That would be the one of the coolest things if somebody wanted to invest a ridiculous number of hours. Okay, so if value is navigation item, nav item, otherwise we're just going to return null because we don't care at that point. Let's see, return, let's see, navigation, oh, actually, what I really want is location property. And the location, not navigation location unknown. Yeah. Nav item. Well, I don't know if I actually want this here because I think I actually want it to fall inside of. I think I actually want it to fall into here and do something more like. Okay, Copilot, you want to impress me? Finish the statement. Go. No, you're wrong. See, Copilot, you're not good enough yet. Can you do it now? No, you need help. Get required service, and this because at some point we're gonna have to do a mapping between one of these and another. So counter view. Let's see, and then because I think I actually want to come into here of dealing with this. Yeah, something about like that, and then there is definitely like some people would like to put all of their value converters up at the top. I really don't like that. Once again, same issue is it has to load them all, and do you really want them at the root? What is your problem? Some custom elements have not yet been built. Yeah, we'll compile them. There, you happier now? There you go. Thank you. Let's see. That resolves, that's resolved. Let's see if it even works. So works right now is we launch. Could not resolve. Perfect. So it doesn't work because we didn't actually resolve the counter, or we didn't register the counter view or any of its related stuff in our register services. So something like this: private static void register counter service collection. Add counter. Oh, I can't do that in a. So we'll just call it like this. Services. Let's see. Add. Do we? There's a question here about what should this be. Should it be a transient or should it be a singleton? Huh. Let's do transient. Counter view. Because this is a good question of when we go to and from this page, do we expect to maintain state or a clean state every time? That's up to you. Let's see. So add counter. Services. There. Now we should be able to DI resolve these. Let's see. Public static class, application service extensions, configure app services. Yes, and I've often done that where I will go through and put these types of things into different areas. I think the biggest thing for people is don't do all your DI registration in one big block. Like, that's ugly. Again, my current personal preference is to vertically slice my application into like major feature areas. And obviously there's going to be some cases where you've got something that's like a cross-cutting, or like it's nice to draw my hands like this and make vertical lines, but at some point there's usually something going horizontally. It's rare that you can box your thing up perfectly like that. It doesn't work that way in practice, but most of the time it can. So I usually try to favor, methods that have names around, hey, this is all the stuff to make the counter feature work. Look, it worked. And then we can go page 2, and we can go back to counter, and it reset. And if we go, oh, you know what? That's dumb. I'd really like it if this was, if it would maintain the state, right? Right, so we can come here, launch this. Now if I go clicky, 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 right? We click away, click back, right? So without doing anything weird, like we can start to control these things, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Maybe a little cool. Kind of, sort of. And the big question here is something like this useful to people? Is this the type of thing that you would want to see in a default template? Is this kind of layout? Because we can go through and build out more user controls for page 2 and page 3 and have them be, kind of thing. It is to me. Okay. I might go through and put something into my WPF demo app to do this. And I will say this, I don't know the right answer. So I will put this out there that way. I do not know if it is better to be view model first or view first. I have gone back and forth, and I don't know that there is a one right answer in all cases. So, and this is probably not fully correct either. There, to be friendlier to the designer, it's probably better to do a design time check in here too and shove a null through and that kind of thing. So there's something to be said about that. There's also the question of, should this be a required service? Should this just be get service? This kind of pattern here for the DI is something that on the link above where my Simply Budget application, I've commented to people before about my auto DI library and how I've loved it and hated it all at the same time, because it does weird IL manipulation to basically give you dependency injection by adding a NuGet package. It's just magic occurs and things come in for free. It's horribly abusive. It's kind of cool, but it's horribly abusive. I migrated Simply Budget away from it. There's a couple big reasons. One is that there's a lot of tooling inside of .NET right now that's designed around like optimizations, and it makes the sweeping assumption that after it's compiled the DLL, nothing's gonna muck with it. Which is usually a pretty safe assumption, that after the compiler has, compiled the code, nothing comes in behind the compiler and goes, well, actually, and changes it out from under it, which is exactly what AutoDI does. It comes in right behind and blows it away. This is kind of a workaround to give yourself that static resolution, because at some point, you have to get static resolution somewhere. And there's... Actually, we might be able to kill this sucker off. Well, it's just so hard because there's certain places where, like for example, this value converter. This value converter, we could inject this differently. Like the only reason we need that DI is to be able to do static calls like this. We need a static call here and a static call here. And technically, this one can go away. The designer gets really unhappy if you do this, but functionally our app still works without the default constructor. And the key reason is because we're no longer trying to just drop the user control straight in our XAML. If we tried to just drop this user control straight into the XAML somewhere, it would fail without the default constructor. Which is why I say we probably want some sort of design time check. Because I was just thinking that we could do something funky where technically main window in its constructor, in addition to taking in main window view model, could take in, heaven forbid, iService provider or similar. And then it would have to be responsible for creating up this value converter, manually putting it into the resource dictionary and the code behind, and yada, yada, yada. Like, that's a thing that can happen. I don't know. This level of static, I think, is acceptable. Yeah. And you'll know nothing's currently calling some of these things, but yeah, I think this is probably okay. I think it's probably okay. So I will consider going through and putting something like this into my template. I'll have to figure out beyond a counter what's a reasonable page to do. Maybe we'll do like an about page or something. That would make sense. Have something in there. And again, there's lots of questions about is this good, right? I'm a little scared that people are going to take this and then run with it and go, this is the way to do navigation in my app. This is one way to do navigation in your app. It's by no means the only way or necessarily the right way. The other big option that I was considering was is a layout that leverages the navigation rail. Because this is a quite a common pattern to see this kind of look along the kind of the left side of your application. It's functionally a tabbed layout, but along the side. And so I'm a little torn on properly handling that. And then you also get into fun situations like, for example, we've technically broken this menu, right? I don't think this works anymore. Yeah. Because clear count is expecting to find that command on the main window view model, and we've moved it. And so then the question becomes, well, you probably want file exit to still exist here, but probably only clear count when you are on page 1. That's a thing, right? So we could, well, we can fix it. And again, I don't know if this is the right option, but this is an option, right? So we will go here and we will go with, what's the easiest way to do this without triggering a binding error? So that you can go through like, so, I guess you don't even have direct access to it, do you? Yeah, you don't even have direct access to it. That makes it awkward. Because this is one of those situations where how do you go through and determine what commands are available? And especially if you're going to go with a view first, this is one of the disadvantages of it. If we went with a view model first approach. There would be a property here with a view model. And we could then do bindings through it up here, right? We could do like, selected view model dot, and even, check its type, pull out commands, and have those types of things surface up. With this, you end up doing funky things with like attached properties to be able to surface information up. And this is why it gets hard, because the right answer depends on what type of app you want to do and what the interaction is that you want. And this is where I struggle on trying to figure out what should be in my template versus what should be left up to the author. I think parts of this should probably be in there. And maybe I should do a small sample of both. Or maybe I should have two different, maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should have both samples. Yeah, maybe my template should take in a switch that's like, dash dash navigation. And you can either say view first, view model first, or none. Something like that. That might be better. And then people can kind of pick which way makes the most sense to them and run with it. And it gives you enough to get up and running, enough to show how each of those would work. I kind of like that. I might just axe this menu then. Or at least axe this bit of the menu. At least for the purposes of the sample. Yeah. Either way, this gives a little nice bit of information, and then for hopefully the lovely comment that I got on YouTube about building out kind of drawer style navigation. Hopefully this gives some idea of what I was very poorly trying to describe. So functionally, the big ideas here are you've got a list box. In my case, I put it inside the drawer. The drawer is open and closed with some toggle buttons, because a toggle button is just a button with an is checked property. And we just bound up the toggle buttons is checked to the drawer host is left drawer open. We also bound is left drawer open to a property on our view model just so our view model can control it. Our list box has a set of items that define our top level navigation. And then a selected item so that we can do work with it in the inside of our view model. Specifically, the work that we're wanting to do is when it is assigned, simply close the drawer. And again, this would be a point of deviation between where you would do either view model first or view first. If this were view model first, there would be a DI resolution in here as well, where it would say, hey, go get me the view model, which is kind of the path that we had started down at the beginning until I changed my mind and went crazy mode. And in that approach, you would end up with a bunch of data templates to link things together. Versus the view approach, where I ended up doing an enum with a DI resolution inside of a converter. So this would be, binding to the selected view model if we were going to go that route. So something in that vein. And then you're off to the races. Am I approaching, let's see, 3363. Let me pull it up. One, it sounds like you're fixing a bug, which immediately makes me excited. Let's see. 3363. Okay, when adding a button to the data group style, when the row is selected, the selected row does not conform the generated which is a skeleton test. Okay, so let's see here. Like that you built out this test. Let's see here. So load user control with template buttons. Check the background color of focus. Yes. Okay, so in this case, your user control is a data grid. Got stuck at this point. Okay. Let's see. Data grid here has header visibility all. Item source ID list. Great. View model list events. Great. Okay. So header ID binding. That's just gonna straight up bind to the int. And then there is, so we expect the first column to just be the literal values 1, 2, 3. Second column, header button, can sort, cell style, cell padding. Okay. Button. Template column here. Got it. Is the button cell background that is the problem. Let's give me 1 second. We can go look at this. And actually, while we're doing this, I'm just gonna kill that tag. Okay. Give me your fork and let's take a look. This might be easier to do. Let's see. What I need is one more remote. Nope. Remote. And then I would like JL DGU. That one. Add. And then okay, and so I want to be, let's just create a branch. Branch. Nope. Create branch. Get cracking. Stop it. Set local. Just put me there. Don't think too hard. Okay, and then if I go here, stop execution. And then let's go close all the things that I've got way too much open. And let's go down and take a look at this test. Data grids, data grid tests. And then let's do attach false, just because I want to pause this guy and be able to play with the app. So awesome work writing tests, by the way. I very much approve. And then I can show you how to reach back and grab the cells. Shouldn't be terribly difficult. But I don't know if I've ever actually built one for doing that. We can grab one though. The worst case scenario, you can grab items with XAML test by index. It's not a great solution, but it's okay. So that thing's busy hitting a breakpoint. Let's grab Snoop real quick. Thanks. Come here. Yeah, so the focus is the button. Interesting. So that is, I'm sorry, I may be getting ahead of the game, but chasing down where this guy's coming from. Okay, so there's that. I want to find where the heck that's coming from. The demo on that clone does the same. Ah, perfect. Let's just chase up the food chain. think if I go here, yeah, so default style trigger. So the behavior here is coming in from a style trigger on data grid cell. Let's just jump to this guy. And I am wondering how... well, let's... Before I get too carried away. Show me. Is there not a... I'm guessing I know the answer. Wow. Visual Studio. You wanna come back to me real quick? Thanks. Thank you. Is that... Data grid cell, because I'm wondering if this may end up not actually being a full bug and may be an artifact of the fact that when you don't set the based on, you end up picking up the default WPF style for data grid cell. Yeah, see, that actually now handles it properly. So, I guess then the fixed, easy, yeah. So this is, I jump back here real quick. This is actually something I ended up even putting in the wiki because there are a this basic premise of what ends up happening is you end up if you don't set a based on, you end up dropping the material design styling, and so you'll pick up something. The question is what, and oftentimes is the default WPF one. Hey, how's it going? It's doing good. I am doing good. We were just reviewing an issue here. So I guess then the question comes back to, is there a bug here? And I don't know if there's necessarily a bug here. Now there may be a, because the other thing is, like, this setter is going to have no effect without the based on. Wow, Visual Studio, really? Okay, we're just gonna kill you. Because the material design attached properties, only a handful of them actually add behavior when you set them. Some people, because with an attached property, you can watch its property changed and do work when people set the value to something. But oftentimes, for most of the material design library, we don't do any work when the property changes. It's literally just holding that data. And so the style or the template will watch that property and do stuff with it, but setting the property itself won't necessarily have an effect. Again, there's a couple exceptions to that, but most of the time that's the desired use case because it gives you a lot of control over what you want the thing to do. When you put behavior behind an attached property, you have to start making assumptions, and you can only get so far before your assumptions fall over. So I think this may end up not being a bug, simply with needing to set the based on. So, oh, and that's what I was going to do. I was going to check, because you had set it here on the demo app. Because I assume if I look here, yeah, so same issue in the demo app is it just needs the based on. and then it should just work. So I think that, so I'll let you go back and double check it, JC, but I think this one can probably be closed out, because I think it's just a matter of adding the based on style, which isn't something that we can necessarily always detect. Flag this on, and then we can go from there. But first of all, thank you for writing up those tests. That makes it significantly easier to see and understand what's going on. So very much appreciate that. Cool. It is just about midnight for me, and I have a busy week followed by another busy week. Again, if anybody's going to be around for Microsoft Ignite, did I close those pages already? I may have closed them. I think I did. If you're around for Microsoft Ignite next week, come stop by and see me. 5th floor, Expert Center. I'll be around the developer tables at one of those both days. Or the other option, if you're watching conferences and you're looking for something a little more developer focused, .NET Conf is also next week, November 14th through 16th. Both are free for online attendees. Sign up. Lots of cool content, lots of cool announcements coming. It'll be great. Yes. Also, on that note, no stream next week because I'm at the Ignite conference, and so it's already going to be a long day. I'm not going to try to kill myself streaming after driving 5.5 hours. So, with that said, I will see everybody in 2 weeks. As always, happy coding. Talk to you next time.